In the heart of America's landscape, oak-hickory forests and savannas stand as a testament to nature's strength and diversity. These rare and vibrant ecosystems, shaped by centuries of fire and natural processes, support a rich diversity of life. From majestic oak trees to a variety of other plants and animals that rely on their unique habitat to survive. As development continues to swallow up large swaths of open space, these invaluable forests and savannas are critical habitats worth saving. These habitats offer a breathtaking world where nature's beauty unfolds in vibrant hues with sweeping landscapes. It's important to save the untouched tracts of forests and savannas because if these habitats are lost, they're potentially lost forever. That's because creating a thriving oak-hickory forest or savanna is anything but a quick or easy process.
If you look at what nature would do, it would go through a succession process where if you left an old field, you'd start getting weeds and goldenrods and things like that coming up. And then eventually you'd get a few sort of woody, shrubby type plants coming in. And then eventually some things like maybe some willows and cottonwoods and things like that. And eventually you'd get some trees coming in. That whole process could easily take 200 to 300 years. Now in restoration, we can speed that up a little bit, but you've still got the soil development, the development of the whole insect population, the development of the fungi in the soil. The fungus in the soil is actually really important to these trees. The mycorrhizae, or the fungus that's in the soil, actually connects the roots from one tree to the next. And it allows those trees to actually, one, gather more water and nutrients. It also provides some communication between the trees. And if we were to start just a restoration process, you're not going to have all that fungi.
All of that fungi beneath our feet is the bedrock to build a solid foundation for all those towering trees.
If they need a resource like water or nutrients, sometimes they're able to borrow it from the trees around them, especially those old, really mature trees that have a little extra to share. They also connect with each other in the air through pheromones. So if something comes and like an insect and is trying to attack a tree, it can send these pheromones out into the air, and the trees around it will react to that chemical and build up their own reinforcements so that when the insect comes to them, their leaves might taste bitter or really bad for the insect. So the mycorrhizae that connects all of the trees to each other, what does it get out of that relationship? Well, the tree is willing to give about 30% of its sugar, all the sugar that it makes with the photosynthesis, with its leaves, gives that to the mycorrhizae that connects it to its neighbors. The tree, in addition to this ability to communicate with its neighbors, will get a lot of nitrogen. So mycorrhizae is a fungus. It pulls nitrogen and other nutrients out of the soil, and it will feed that back to the trees. So they have this beneficial relationship in addition to the communication networks that it builds. One of the most amazing things about oaks and hickories is how much life just one tree can support. Oaks are the host plant for over 600 different species of butterflies and moths. They both have nuts that provide food for mammals and birds all throughout the winter. In old-growth, undisturbed forests like this, when we talk about how much life one tree can support, it's not just one generation. It's generation after generation supported by the same trees. So here we have fungus, we have slugs, spiders, and especially under bark like this, bats will come and they will roost underneath them. We have over 13 different species of bat in Illinois. And in the summertime, while all the females have their colonies together, the males will come and roost under bark like this during the day so that they're completely hidden from sight before they come out in the nighttime to eat all of the insects that are hiding underneath the fungus.
These large old forests are really important for a number of different bird species. One of the most obvious ones are woodpeckers, because the large old trees provide a large enough tree trunk for them to actually create their cavities and to live in. You're not going to find pileated woodpeckers living in trees that are about the size of a telephone pole. They're going to have to be much bigger than that. The other thing that these trees provide, especially things like the oaks, are the high diversity of insects that are in the oaks. And those insects actually then support all sorts of the other birds, like any number of different flycatchers and warblers that are not going to be as well supported by the lower diversity of insects that you find on sugar maple trees.
In an oak-hickory forest, everything in it plays a crucial role, and each native species helps maintain a delicate balance so they all can not only survive, but thrive.
If we start losing the oak-hickory forest, we're not just losing the oak trees and they're being replaced by sugar maple trees. We're also losing a lot of the understory, and we're losing a lot of shrubs, things like spice bush and white baneberry and things like that, that actually are foods for birds during fall migration. And instead, those understory shrubs are being replaced then basically by baby sugar maples. The other thing that we tend to lose is a lot of the sedges and other grasses and things that are right on the ground level, because the shade level underneath the oak forest, actually there's a lot more light coming through underneath an oak forest than there is under a maple forest.
Oaks and hickories over the millennia have evolved to work really well together in the forests that they create. Oaks have this massive canopy where they reach out for the sun, they really like to have sun, and they take up a lot of that canopy. Hickories have a little more tolerance for shade, so they're able to grow into those kind of softer dappled light areas. Oaks also live a lot longer than hickories do. This tree in particular is at least 200 years old. It's far older than any of us. And while hickories do live for a really long time, they come and go underneath the shade of the oaks and kind of just support the big oak trees who dominate the oak-hickory forests.
These trees are connected in multiple ways, and that also includes working together to keep the forest thriving.
When trees have the ability to communicate with its neighbors, they actually can decide together whether or not to mast, and that's the word for fruiting. So deciding we're going to grow acorns this year, we're going to grow our hickories this year and release them. Some years they'll actually decide not to mast, so they won't release any of those, and they do this to kind of confuse the mammals or the animals that rely on that food, so that no animal solely relies on those trees. And it doesn't matter if trees in the next town over or even just a few blocks away, they can all decide to mast. Over in this area, they can decide we're going to take this year off. So they make that decision by communicating with each other underground, And so you'll be able to see in one spot, you'll have all the acorns everywhere over on the ground, and then a little grove of oaks nearby. Nothing will be on the ground over there.
A walk through an oak-hickory forest is a tranquil one and provides a much-needed escape from the hustle and bustle of urban life. You can hear the rustling of leaves and take in the earthy fragrances that come along with a habitat that's teeming with biodiversity, all while listening to the symphony of our local birds.
When you're walking along the trails, you might notice a number of downed trees. It might not look the tidiest, but these trees are giving back to the forest community at large. They become nutrients for the soil, but they also become food for lots of insects, snails, and slugs. Little mammals and rodents, and sometimes birds will come to these, and they'll devour all those insects, as will spiders. And in a freshly downed tree, a lot of chipmunks or squirrels can use those cavities as nesting areas. Sometimes we also do let trees stay standing even after they're dead. Those trees are perfect for woodpeckers and lots of animals to use the cavities that are already there as a nest for their young.
While those dead and downed trees play a role with the living aspects of the forest, they also tell a story about that sprawling landscape.
When you look at the trees that fell down, they're telling you about the past, the history of the place. And so those are the trees that were here. And then as you walk through that gap in the canopy that's made, and start looking at what are the little trees that are going to likely take that big tree's place, you start seeing the future of the forest and how it's either going to stay the same or change. And one of the things that we see changing in a lot of our forests around here is that we have a lot of oak-hickory forests that are actually becoming maple forests now because of the maples coming up through those openings. What they're doing is replacing the oaks, and with the oak understory, the oaks are actually supporting more insects than a maple forest does. The oak trees have a lot more caterpillars, insects, and things on them, which then actually supports more birds.
While any season can be perfect for hiking in an oak-hickory forest, spring stands out as a time when this vibrant habitat truly comes to life.
One of my favorite times to come out and go through some of these older growth forests is in the springtime before the leaves come out, because that's when you have all of those spring wildflowers coming up. And those spring wildflowers are coming up and leafing out and flowering before the trees leaf out. And they are, you're not going to find them out in an open field. You're not going to find them in some secondary growth shrubby areas. They're only going to be found really in these larger old growth forests. The other interesting thing about all of these spring wildflowers too is not just these great big trees and things that are there, but also the little tiny creatures like the ants. The ants are actually really important in distributing the seeds of these spring wildflowers. And they'll take the seeds from the spring wildflowers and actually carry them back to their nests. And there's a little fatty tissue on the side of these seeds called an elastome that the ants actually peel off and they'll actually eat, and they discard the seeds. And when they discard the seeds, then they're actually spreading them and dispersing them. So it's really in these situations where you have the large trees, spring wildflowers, the ants, the fungi in the soil that actually come together to actually make these large old growth forests.
When you think of a forest, an immediate picture will come to mind. But what about a savanna? Well, it's not as simple. That's because savannas aren't quite a forest, nor are they a grassland. Instead, they're the best components of both.
A savanna has about 10 to 30% tree cover, which isn't a whole lot, and is mostly made up of grasses underneath. There can be some prairie flowers as well, but it's a lot of big blue stem as well as some of our shorter grasses. Savannas like this one cover about 26 to 40% of the entire planet's landscape. These places are hotspots for biodiversity because they have the trees that can support lots of animals that need those, as well as animals who need the grasses and more of the open spaces.
Just a few of the creatures that can be found in these savanna habitats locally are slender glass lizards, a variety of dragonflies, six-lined racerunners, and many different butterflies. Not only are savannas home to a wealth of wildlife, but savannas are incredible places for holding onto and storing carbon. Those extremely long roots of the native grasses, as well as the trees, act as huge carbon sinks. What's particularly interesting about the deep roots is that while you can't see how deep they go, you can actually feel that depth just by touching the plant.
When we're talking about deep roots, it's not just a foot or so under the ground. Some of these plants, like blazing star and big blue stem, have exceptionally deep roots. Blazing star roots can go up to 15 feet down into the ground, and big blue stem is about 10 feet. That's so deep that even the groundwater that they're pulling up into the plants makes them cooler to the touch than the other plants around them. This one is still pretty cool because it's morning, but this one is actually cold to the touch because of those deep roots.
Even though savannas have many environmental benefits, particularly as it relates to climate change, they still face a huge risk from humans.
Because they don't have a whole lot of trees and they can feel just like wide open spaces, they are at one of the highest risks of conversion, which means that we are readily turning them into farmland, which is important. Most of our food comes from savannas or former savannas, as well as development for land. There aren't a whole lot of trees to remove, and we can just develop that land. So they are seeing the fastest rates of change compared to any other habitat.
As development results in savannas becoming more fragmented and broken up into smaller and smaller pieces, we lose all of the things that make a savanna a sustainable and healthy ecosystem.
The biodiversity that we see in places like this is so much greater than you might imagine. We can find plants that you see in someone's backyard, as well as cacti in Will County. We have this huge range that just cannot exist in any other ecosystem other than a savanna. Like here we have one of our oak trees that we see in our forests, as well as the cacti on the ground. One of the reasons that we see oaks and hickories together in forests is because they share a lot of the same requirements for sunlight, for soil, but the thing that defines them the most is their tolerance for fire. Both of those species or groups of trees have a really high tolerance for fire. And all of our managed old-growth forests as well as savannas are both managed with fire. It's what we use to keep the invasive species out, but it also keeps out other species who might not be able to handle it. Maples and beeches have a much lower tolerance, So we don't find them in places where we predominantly have oaks and hickories.
Without fire, a sprawling savanna can easily be overtaken by other trees and shrubs that don't necessarily belong, resulting in it becoming too shady. With that comes the loss of the plants and animals that make a savanna a savanna. But restoration on a bigger scale can help the habitat recover.
A lot of times we try and do prairie restorations in areas that have been converted wholesale to row crop agriculture. So it's relatively straightforward to take a corn and soybean field and restore it to prairie. Savannas are extremely difficult to restore from the ground up like that. We've had a few projects where we've started from row crop agriculture fields, but that's going to be 100 years or so before that's sort of matured into itself. Areas like this are where we're working with sort of a remnant, an original savanna, and we're just sort of reintroducing the processes that are going to allow it to rediscover itself in a way, to sort of recover its identity and its diversity. So it's less a thing about creating something as opposed to just sort of allowing or reintroducing the processes that are going to allow it to express itself. It's sort of, from a human standpoint, it's less of something that we're predetermining the end as opposed to just letting it sort of recover itself. So this is an area where the savanna had become kind of dense with trees and with shrubs, and just with woodies in general. And I'm talking maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago was when sort of I first encountered this area. And so since then we've done a fair amount of habitat management. We've thinned some of the trees, we've done prescribed burns, we've done some deer management. All of those have kind of combined to now where we have, we still have a lot of trees, but we have a lot of openings between the trees.
These days, a walk through the Braidwood Dunes and Savannah Nature Preserve shows off all the work that has resulted in this habitat being restored to the best savanna it can be.
Yeah, so this area here is really emblematic, I guess, of an area that's recovered really nicely. Like we have the prairie plants, we got a bunch of the Savannah blazing, or not Savannah, rough blazing star in bloom, the partridge pea, the early goldenrod, you know, all that is blossomed here. And we also have the woody component, the trees that are characteristic of savanna. So we've got the nice open grown oak trees, we've got a bunch of young oak trees coming in and kind of, you know, scattering in a smatter here. So this is the sort of area that it's been great to just watch it sort of recover and watch it, you know, recover its identity as a savanna from being an overshaded, overgrown, kind of woody mess. Like this is a rough blazing star is the purple that's in bloom now. And they were here before. They were just kind of short and really shade suppressed. The shade kept them from blooming. So now they have enough sunlight that they're able to be in full glorious bloom. And all the pollinators, all the bumblebees and butterflies and other insects that rely on this pollen are now able to come and use them as a food source. If you come at any different time, there'll be different things in bloom and different pollinators that are visiting them and different birds. It's fun to come through the seasons and just see how it changes. You know, if you come, I was here maybe 2 weeks ago and it looked very different just visually based on what's in bloom and what I was hearing from the animals in the sound. So it's a really pleasing place to come explore, I think.
Savannas may go unnoticed, overshadowed by forests and vast prairies, but there's plenty to love about this particular type of habitat.
I think they've been underestimated for a long time because they're viewed as sort of transitional habitats between woodlands and prairies. You know, that I think that they were overlooked for a fair number of years there, but they're also worthy of attention in their own right, as a patchwork of sort of habitats all in one. Like here we have some prairie openings, we've got some upland woodlands, and we have a lot of savannas in between. Within this habitat context, there's a lot of low-lying areas that are wet and are also important. But I think the bigger picture is that all these together in the appropriate place on the landscape is just that much more powerful than each one individual on their own. So I would say that the savannas as an overriding concept is really great because it encompasses all the sort of microhabitats from wooded all the way to prairie and wetland, sort of all together.
The next time you take a stroll through an old-growth forest and savanna, take a moment to slow down, observe, and appreciate these vital habitats. They are home to countless species that enrich our lives. Protecting them means preserving biodiversity and ensuring a balanced ecosystem. Old-growth forests are nature's timekeepers, telling a story of adaptation over centuries. They store carbon, helping to combat climate change and purify our air. When we protect these lands, we safeguard our water sources, enhance soil health, and support our local communities. The fight for old-growth forests and savannas is a fight for our planet's future and our irreplaceable treasures that should be saved for generations.